You're listening to Uptown Radio. It's Thursday, April 20th. I'm Henrietta McFarlane. Many restaurants rely on delivery apps to reach customers, but some small business owners say caps on advertising are holding them back.
It's about giving small business owners the power to make a decision about their own businesses.
There's a new plan to make 10 of New York's bus services totally free, but some passengers aren't sure it's going to make any difference.
Here, you just walk right on because nobody pays.
Theatres, restaurants and residents have banded together to oppose a proposal to open a casino in Times Square.
We work here, we're raising our families here, and we don't want your casino here.
Now that weed's legal, will today, 420, become the next commercialised holiday? All this and more on Uptown Radio. But first, the news.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The U.S. Supreme Court's adherence to its own ethics rules is under close examination in Congress. The chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Dick Durbin, has invited the Chief Justice of the United States, John Roberts, to testify before the panel on May 2nd. This following reporting by ProPublica that Justice Clarence Thomas accepted gifts and luxury travel from a wealthy GOP donor for decades, but failed to publicly disclose them. Many are waiting to see if the nation's top court intervenes in a legal battle over an abortion pill. If it does not, access to mifepristone could be unavailable in many states as of Friday midnight. NPR's Sarah McCammon says lower court orders would restrict the drug.
If the Supreme Court were to take no action at all before that Friday night deadline, then a lower court ruling from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals would take effect and would impose several restrictions on mifepristone. The FDA says it believes in that situation that every package of mifepristone would become instantly misbranded and couldn't be lawfully sold across state lines, among other things. The FDA also says the generic version of the drug would cease to be approved altogether. The bottom line is that everyone is once again watching to see what the U.S. Supreme Court will say.
NPR's Sarah McCammon. Alabama authorities say officers have arrested a fourth person in connection with last Saturday's mass shooting at a birthday party in Dadeville. Troy Public Radio's Kyle Gassett has more.
With this latest arrest, the number of suspects the police have charged climbs to 4, the same number of victims killed in the shooting last week at a Sweet 16 birthday party. All 4 suspects have been charged with reckless murder, and police have announced the last 2 arrests online instead of holding press conferences and taking questions. Police have also declined to discuss a possible motive for the killings. Meanwhile, one family has announced a funeral service for next week to remember Philstavius Dowdle. The track athlete and football player was one of 2 high school seniors killed. For NPR News, I'm Kyle Gassett in Montgomery, Alabama.
In a new report, cybersecurity researchers say they've uncovered a North Korean plot to breach 2 software supply chain companies. The goal appears to be stealing money from cryptocurrency firms. Here's NPR's Jen McLaughlin.
Over recent years, hackers have targeted software products from vendors in the supply chain in order to reach the greatest number of victims. Like when Russian hackers targeted popular IT software company SolarWinds, which was widely used by both the federal government and private companies. Now, researchers from Google's Mandiant say they found a double supply chain breach for the first time ever. That means North Korean hackers compromised a piece of financial trading software before then infecting a business communication software called 3CX. The multi-tiered attack gave the hackers high-level access to a large number of devices. The researchers believe they were narrowly interested in cryptocurrency companies and financial gain. Jenna McLaughlin, NPR News.
This is NPR.
For Uptown Radio, I'm Elizabeth
About what you do
Erb.
with it.
The driver who plowed through Midtown streets after fleeing a traffic stop yesterday is still on the loose. The 56-year-old North Carolina man escaped on foot after bulldozing through multiple blocks. Vulcan Moody, the owner of restaurant Wine 30, says the man drove through his outdoor dining section.
We went through all the tables and chairs, and it was crazy. It was like a movie.
There were no casualties, but an NYPD officer who was hit during the incident sustained head trauma. He's since been released from the hospital. Today, Mayor Adams announced the release of Plan NYC, Getting Sustainability Done, a strategic plan to combat the effects of climate change. New York will be the first major city in America to launch a climate budgeting initiative to meet long-term climate goals.
We are taking our climate plan to the next level, one rooted in practical, actionable steps that will help all New Yorkers.
These steps include installing solar panels on city-owned roofs and expanding electric battery charging locations to reach carbon neutral by 2050. Willis Moore has been identified as the only person killed in Tuesday's deadly garage collapse in Lower Manhattan. Moore worked as the garage's manager for over a decade. An investigation is now underway, led by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. It's still unclear what caused the collapse, but city officials are looking at the age of the building and weight of cars as potential factors. Tonight, Larissa Fasthorse will become the first female Native American writer to have a play debut on Broadway.
For me, it means a win for our community, but I'm just so thrilled that it's just one of many, many, many Native plays to come in the near future, I hope.
The Thanksgiving play follows a group as they try to put on a politically correct show about Thanksgiving. The production will continue at the Helen Hayes Theater until June 4th. It's a sunny day out there today. Temperatures will reach 64 degrees. But pack a jacket if you're heading out tonight, as they're expected to fall into the 50s this evening. Elizabeth Erb, Columbia Radio News.
Advertising on delivery apps can really help businesses reach more customers. But here in New York, there's a cap on how much restaurants can pay to be promoted on these apps. A bill being considered by the City Council could now abolish that cap. As Thomas Copeland reports, restaurant owners are divided.
I'm at Medusa the Greek, a restaurant in Park Slope, with the owner, George Constantino. In the cramped kitchen at the back, Constantino shows me a yellow delivery slip.
This prints out here, this is a Grubhub order. It's going to a Julie P. Today she's getting 2 pieces of halloumi, she's getting stuffed grape leaves, a beet salad with grilled shrimp, a maruli salad with grilled shrimp, Greek lentil soup, and 2 Greek chicken soup.
She's pretty hungry.
Yes, it's a nice meal for a chill day, right?
When the pandemic hit, restaurants like this were forced to shut their doors. If they weren't already, many joined delivery apps like Grubhub, DoorDash, and Uber Eats.
I think we got a notice on a Sunday and we had to close Monday by 5 p.m. So imagine 5-10% of your sales coming from takeout and delivery, and then overnight, 100% of your sales are coming from takeout and delivery. It's really scary.
When city lawmakers saw how much restaurants relied on these apps, they introduced caps on the fees that the apps could charge, like for marketing services. Delivery apps could charge no more than 5% for restaurants to, say, appear higher in their search results or even be recommended directly to customers.
So when these caps came in, and at first it was a temporary cap and then it became permanent, this was a blessing.
Now, the City Council is considering whether to abolish that marketing cap. But influential industry organisations like the New York City Hospitality Alliance have gathered together nearly 1,000 restaurants to oppose the plan.
Right here in Park Slope, I bet you there's 30 pages of restaurants. So, do I want to appear in page 25, 26? No, I don't. I want to appear higher, so I may have to pay more.
And Constantino's concern could be justified. When a similar fee cap was abolished in Washington, D.C. in March, Uber Eats told restaurants that if they didn't pay, customers would have to search for them by name in the app. Not good for business, right? Or maybe it's an opportunity. But only if you're willing to pay more.
I'm Dr. Mark Drapo, Editor-in-Chief of the Data Catalyst Institute in Washington, D.C.
Mark's think tank has been looking at what happened when price caps were introduced.
Over time, what you find is that less orders tend to go to the small independent restaurants, more orders tend to go to the larger and chain restaurants.
Mark says one factor here could be that big chain restaurants like McDonald's, Subway or Taco Bell, they have their own marketing departments. Small restaurants don't. And Mark says letting the small restaurants pay more in marketing fees could level the playing field. So right now, I'm off to meet someone who wants to do just that.
We have a berry crazy, which is my favorite. We have pineapple mango tango. Then we have
Dawn Kelly owns the Nourish Spot, a juice bar across the city in Jamaica, Queens. I met her under a yellow umbrella outside, smoothie in hand.
So we have strawberry banana slammer, and we have a 24 carat. And when I drink that, I feel invincible.
During the pandemic, Kelly found the delivery apps were helping her reach more customers than ever.
In New York City, it is extremely challenging to rise above the noise. And the only way for people to know that you exist is to advertise, and then promote, and then you got to do it some more.
Scores of other New York restaurants are on Kelly's side of the debate. They want to be able to pay more for marketing, and they can only do so if the cap is scrapped.
It's about giving small business owners the power to make a decision about their own businesses.
Back at Medusa the Greek in Park Slope, George Constantino has plans for expansion.
I'm opening 2 new restaurants up the block from my current businesses, and I'm really thinking if I'm going to use these apps or just use my own in-house delivery team, which I have experience using.
So Constantino is nervously awaiting the results of this bill. He's hoping City Hall will deliver a vote on time. Thomas Copeland, Columbia Radio News.
Residents of the Times Square neighbourhood have joined with local businesses to fight a plan for a new casino in the theatre district. Alita Lafuag, president of the Manhattan Plaza Tenants Association, says the casino is a threat to her community.
People forget that Times Square is only 2 blocks from very densely residential areas. We live here, we work here, we're raising our families here, and we don't want your casino here.
But the developers of the casino plan argue that Times Square, with its millions of tourists and neon lights, is tailor-made for gambling, and that it will bring a lot of money to the area. We were curious about the impact that other casinos have had on their cities, so I called up an expert. Jeffrey Lolly is a professor at Widener University. He used to work in the gambling industry. I asked him what happens when a casino moves to town.
Well, I think there's broad impact, and it's both positive impact and negative impact. Positively, obviously, it's a huge economic driver for any region or area because of the taxes that are generated from gaming. It provides tons of jobs. It also creates and increases tourism to that area. Obviously, it's another attraction for people to come and see.
Won't people stay inside the casino? Will they go to other restaurants rather than just staying inside the casino and buying food and drinks inside?
If you can get people to stay for longer periods of time and not just be a frequent traveler or just going for the day, then chances are that, yes, they will visit other businesses, other restaurants outside because they want variety. They don't want the same old thing.
Okay, so what are the negative consequences?
A lot of people anecdotally will say that it increases crime, and there's no data that shows it increases crime any more than any other new business coming into an area. There's more people, so there's more potential of, but there's no data that shows that. It also creates more congestion, right, and more traffic. So in an area that's already very congested, we're talking about Times Square specifically, it's going to create a lot more congestion and a lot more traffic. And of course, for New Yorkers that are local, they already don't like that, right? And it's so it has to be done very strategically with a plan to think about those kind of consequences in terms of how will it impact traffic flow, congestion.
In looking at Times Square specifically, some people are surprised there isn't a casino there already. Do you think it will really have a big impact on the area, given it's already a busy, touristy place?
I think it will, because I think people are tired of the same old in Times Square. It hasn't changed much, right? There's not a lot of new development there. And once you've kind of been there, you've been there, right? You've seen everything. So I think it will bring a new market, a new group of people to have a reason to go to Manhattan, right?
So there are quite a lot of New Yorkers who are very skeptical about this. What would you say to them?
I think you have to keep an open mind, and I would be skeptical. I understand if that was my home, but I think you have to keep it in mind, and you have to listen to what the plan is. It depends on so many things, right? How it's executed, who does it, what criteria, demands are placed upon the casino operator, and really how it's rolled out. Look, at the end of the day, no matter where you put this casino, you're not going to make everybody happy. People are going to still be upset, right? But we can try to mitigate that or minimize that as much as possible in how we execute this.
Okay, and one last question. So you're a gambling casino expert. Do you gamble yourself?
When I go once in a while, I do. I wouldn't call myself a big gambler.
What's your top bet?
Oh, a couple $100. It's fun. It's gaming. And that's really what it's about at the end of the day.
That's Jeffrey Lolly, professor at Widener University and gambling industry expert. Thank you so much for speaking with me today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Henrietta.
And now for one of our regular segments. It's a slice of the city.
You spend dozens of hours with somebody, honestly, just sitting there and just letting them talk is really nice.
East Village tattoo artist, Chris Crowder.
We developed a name for it. We call it tattoo therapy. And I had it explained to me once by a client. Every time she came in for about 2 years, every single time she was going through something traumatic. The loss of a job or, talking about moving or a death in the family, something like that. And after that year and a half, I was comfortable enough to say, are you okay? You seem to be going through a lot of stuff. And she's like, no, honey, that's why I'm here. It's I'd rather feel this than go through that. That kind of reminded me, why I want to do this.
You're listening to Uptown Radio, Thursdays at 4.
The Supreme Court is now deliberating the future of affirmative action at universities. The case involves Asian American students who sued 2 schools, claiming the school's affirmative action policies hurt them. But as Phi Tran reports, there isn't consensus in the Asian American community that affirmative action needs to be banned.
The goal of affirmative action at university is to make sure that different races are represented in each class. In 1978, the Supreme Court ruled that colleges could not use race as the only factor, but they could consider it. The problem now is that some Asian American students feel that their race is being used against them. The current cases before the Supreme Court are from Asian students who say that they should have gone into Harvard and the University of North Carolina based on their grades and scores, but they were rejected. Waiwa Chin is a fellow at the Conservative Manhattan Institute. She went to Columbia, Yale, and Princeton. And she says that colleges can do just fine looking at things other than race.
What is racial diversity serving other than for skin tone? Because if we're looking for diversity for university, the diversity should be thought. Are we actually enhancing the education abilities for people when we tell them to address themselves and think of themselves as racial beings first?
Jin says because of the focus on race, Asian American students are hiding their ethnicity in their applications.
The very evil outcome of having to hide your identity if you happen to be Asian. And that came out in saying that in your essays, you don't want to talk about your experience if you happen to be Asian, about your cultural experiences, because that could give you a penalty, because they could read through it, even if you decide to check on the box, I refuse to identify.
Although the Asian American students bringing the cases to the Supreme Court have gotten a lot of attention, not all Asian Americans agree with them. Professor Mike Huang Nguyen of New York University has filed a friend of the court brief supporting the university right to use race in their decisions.
What I do know is that the majority of Asian Americans actually are in support of affirmative action.
Nguyen says that because they recognize the benefit that affirmative action can bring.
Affirmative action can only be used because it is to build a diverse class of students, and from there, we know that when a classroom is diverse or a school is diverse, there are educational benefits to diversity. That's why you often hear that argument that the use of affirmative action is one of the important dimensions of it is to ensure that classrooms are diverse, because we know there are educational benefits to diverse classrooms.
The Supreme Court has already heard arguments in the case. Now the justices will make the decisions. The rulings are expected in June of this year. Phi Tran, Columbia Radio News.
The MTA is thinking outside the booth. As part of an effort to improve customer satisfaction, station agents who were previously confined to their booths are now meant to be assisting customers on the outside. But almost a month after the announcement, not much seems to have changed. We sent Isabel Tier to ride the city's longest subway line, the A line, to find out how the new MTA policy is working.
The Mott Avenue station in Far Rockaway, Queens, is the first stop on the A line. Or the last, depending on how you look at it. And on Monday, it's where I began my journey, stopping at every single station along the line to see the MTA's new policy in action. I am looking at booth N196 and the booth agent inside. There's a line of a couple people waiting to talk to her. But this isn't what the MTA announced. Under the new policy, the over 2,000 station agents around the city are supposed to be assisting travelers outside the booths, doing things like giving directions or assisting those unfamiliar with the Omni Tap payment system. And the new job description, it comes with a raise. Station agents now receive an extra $1 per hour. But almost 2 hours into my A-Train pilgrimage, the new policy was nowhere in sight. Okay, this is the 11th stop, Rockaway Boulevard. The agent is inside. Still no luck. Nothing seemed to have changed. All the booths I'd seen so far were still occupied. It was business as usual. Several stops later, from inside his booth, one station agent said he wasn't even sure what the guidelines were, and we're not using his name, because he's worried it could cause problems with his supervisor. Would you be able to tell me what the new guidelines you were told were?
I'm still waiting to get them myself. They don't know. I haven't been told anything. I'm just waiting for instructions from them.
While he doesn't mind the idea of working outside the booth, he isn't going to until he's explicitly told. Because for the 12 years he's worked this job, the policy has been to stay inside.
I don't want to take it on myself and do the wrong thing and something happens, then they're going to say, why did you do it?
Before phones and Metro cards, the station agents used to sell tokens from their booths to the subway riders. But then tokens were replaced with Metro cards. And soon those will be gone, replaced by Omni. Which means it's possible that the station agents don't have much to do inside their booths. I emailed and called the MTA to ask if making sure their employees have plenty to do is one of the reasons for the new plan. But they didn't respond. Either way, okay, another booth agent inside the booth. Then finally, 3 hours and 19 stops into my A-line expedition, I found evidence of the MTA's new plan. A station agent out in the wild, wearing a neon yellow vest and standing next to his booth. He says he has been trained on the new policy. How often do you find yourself going outside of your booth?
Periodically. You have me going out. Look and see everything's okay.
Do you agree with the new rules?
Well, I'd say it's good for all their customers.
And this is what the MTA is hoping for. By having the station agents don neon yellow vests and work outside the booths, the MTA says it wants to make travelers feel safer, more comfortable on the subway. Ridership dropped drastically during the pandemic, so the MTA hopes this initiative will help bring more riders and money back to the subway system. Except the riders I spoke with along the A-line say they haven't noticed any changes. Like Tyshawn LeBrun, who's headed uptown, waiting for the train at 14th Street, my 26th stop.
No, they don't come out. I haven't noticed them outside the booth.
And he doesn't blame the station agents.
A lot of times the customers, they catch an attitude and basically want to fight, so it's more understandable that they want to be inside the booth and not outside the booth.
It's possible that the station agents agree. Because 7 hours after leaving Far Rockaway, as the A-Train and I reached our 37th and final stop, I had only seen 4 station agents outside of their booths. There was only one more stop to check. Here we are at the final stop, and the booth agent is inside. While 207th Street might have marked the end of my transit journey, the station agents are just starting one of their own. The contract between the MTA and the union representing the agents expires next month. Negotiations are already underway. Isabel Tier, Columbia Radio News.
From the subway platform to the bus, New York City has the most extensive public transportation system in the country, with nearly 400,000 people taking the MTA buses each day. But during the pandemic, ridership fell by more than half, and it still hasn't improved. One potential solution, proposed by the group Fix the MTA and endorsed by the mayor, is to make some New York City bus rides, 2 in each borough, free. Izepa Macias has more.
152nd Street on the Upper West Side, Norma Hirschfield is waiting for the M5 bus. And she has some thoughts on how to make NYC transit better.
Put your time and effort into, like the elevators at the train stations, making them, I feel uncomfortable. I don't like to ride them because I'm afraid, and I'm sure I'm not the only one.
As far as free bus passes go, Hirschfield thinks they could introduce more problems than they solve.
And, and some of the homeless people, will make it their home.
Yeah.
So I don't want to ride with a homeless person. I don't know what their history is.
Besides, Hirschfield says, free bus passes isn't going to fix her pet peeve.
That the M5 doesn't come often enough. Okay, you could wait. Sometimes I just walk because it's faster. Yeah. There'll be 4 of them. Whatever direction I'm going in, they come more frequently on the other side.
David Colon writes about Transit for Streets blog. He agrees. When it comes to buses, for many riders, cost is not the most important issue.
People who want free buses are people who say they want effective buses, and that means buses that come way more often, buses that are not stuck in traffic.
Fixing those concerns will take far more than the city giving out free rides.
So for that, you need to kind of remake the streets. You need to make sure that people aren't parking in bus stops. You need to make sure that bus lanes are clear and that they exist.
Colon says that those are things the mayor can control, like when new bus lanes are installed. But he says the mayor saying he's in favor of a free bus pass pilot is kind of easy for him because he doesn't have to pay for it.
Bus riders don't care if it's free. They just care if the bus shows up when it says it's going to go, when it's supposed to, and it's going to get you where it is supposed to take you on time, and it will get you there fast.
Back at 152nd Street, the bus finally arrives, 10 minutes late. Annie McMiniman climbs on. When she goes to pay, the fare reader says declined. But McMiniman heads to the back anyways.
If I have a lot of stuff in my hand, I just walk right on.
That's right. She walks right on without paying. You could say she's a fare jumper, or you could say she's showing her support for the new plan. Izepa Macias, Columbia Radio News.
This story was produced with help from Kamal Mengrajani. Once upon a time, April 20th was just another day in spring. But that's no longer. Today, we know it as 420, a day to celebrate marijuana. For the first time, recreational users in New York City can buy their 420 marijuana legally. Isabel Tier talked to those who are choosing to celebrate.
Chris Goodwin decided not to go to work today.
I called in sick. It's a national holiday.
How are you going to be celebrating?
No plans. Take an edible. See what happens.
Goodwin has celebrated 420 since he was in college, when a friend gave him weed peanut butter, and they spent the day swinging on swings in the park. But this 420 is different from all the previous ones, because that edible he's going to eat later in celebration, he bought it legally.
I went down to Housing Works Cannabis. Best place in the city, I think.
Housing Works Cannabis Company opened in December of 2022. It was New York City's first legal recreational dispensary, and today is their first legal 420. Which is why, an hour before opening, there's already a line outside. The security guard, who goes by the name Diesel, has been preparing for this day, setting up the red velvet ropes and the brass posts.
Look at that, huh? Well, nice and shiny over there. We're always on our game here at Housing Works.
Second in the long line is Odin Calvert.
Probably going to buy a few eighths if I can. I mean, I'm in line pretty quickly, so hopefully I get the good stuff.
Inside the store, the staff is blowing up balloons, large, shiny green numbers, 420. And there's a live DJ blasting music. So one of the workers takes me downstairs to talk.
My name is Sasha Nugent. I'm the budmaster here at Housing Works Cannabis.
She says the beginning of the weeks are usually slow for them. But this week was different.
This whole week has been an increase in sales. So even on a Monday, we saw an uptick in sales as well. And today I'm expecting to double what we normally do on a Thursday.
double the sales. What started as a numerical joke amongst secret weed smokers is now a commercial opportunity. Which makes you wonder, as more and more legal dispensaries open, will 420 become a corporate-approved holiday for partying? Is it the new Cinco de Mayo or St. Patrick's Day? Safira Galoob, the executive director of the National Cannabis Roundtable, says it already is. What's missing is the branding.
So I believe 420 is the cannabis holiday. And once, we see more ubiquitousness in supporting a regulated market, I think certain brands and certain products are going to become more popularized, but the overall market is going to be celebrated on this day for the inevitable future.
Back outside of the Housing Works dispensary, Odin Calvert says the magic of 420 isn't just the weed. It's about what you do with it. He's going to the park to smoke with friends. He isn't worried about the holiday selling out.
I don't think corporate companies or that corporate vibe will ever take over weed. I think it's too free for that to ever happen.
Which is a sweet thought for a beautiful, sunny weed holiday. Of course, this is New York City, where nothing stays free and uncorporate for long. Isabel Tier, Columbia Radio News.
That's it for this edition of Uptown Radio. We hope Joe. Our executive producer today was Valentina Zarans Martinez. Leading our staff of reporters was senior producer V. Tran. Director Thomas Copeland direct coordinated our studio production team. Elizabeth Erb delivered our local newscast, and day reporters Isabel Tier and Isefa Macias brought you the latest on the ground in New York. Our instructors Sally Herships, Robert Smith, and Lydia McMillan-Laird advised our staff. I'm Henrietta McFarlane. Uptown Radio is live Thursdays at 4. Until next time, you can find us at uptownradio.org. From all of us here at Uptown Radio, thanks for listening.